And we are recording the meeting as well. So it is 8:30 Central, 9:30 on the East Coast. Time to start our Wednesday night Success Partners team Zoom training. And we start, as we always do, with our signature message. You guys can read along with me. Although you're muted, I won't hear you, but that's okay. I'm a part of a growing team of entrepreneurs with a shared mission to protect and empower 2 million families and small businesses with Legal Shield's network of law firms and world-class identity theft services. Excuse me. What we do matters, and we are looking for help. With that, I have the pleasure of turning the Zoom room over to a young lady who is doing remarkable things, building the market in and around Evansville, Indiana, and I'm sure she's building her business across the nation as well. She's very active in the Ladies of Justice movement. She is one of the people that are doing our team Zoom calls twice a day, Monday through Friday. And with that, I will turn the room over to Miss Leigh Perry.
Thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate that. Although I have to say, with this last birthday, I probably can't be classified as young anymore. So Leigh Perry, Evansville, Indiana, varied background. You get to be my age. You got a lot of background going on. And I have a question for you. How many people have read Building an Empire by Brian Carruthers? You can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand mechanically. All right, lots of thumbs up, lots of clapping. So this is the 2015 edition, and one of my former workout partners, Max Slocum, who's no longer super active in the business, gave it to me as a gift. And chapter 2 is all about the system. And we hear about the system all the time, but Brian spells out the system and all of the components. And in this edition, it's on page 56. And the first is get excited. Anybody want to guess what number 2 is and write it in the chat? If number 1 is get excited, the next thing we have to do is have what to be able to expand our business. We've got to have a massive list, right? He says, make your list, not a list or someone else's list, but your list, and own it. So those of you that have been around a while know that I've struggled in the past with coachability. I'm pretty much off the charts with learning, but probably a C+ on coachability up to now. And I'm getting better all the time. So I've heard John Drennan and other leaders preach over and over again about the importance of having a really big list since I joined Legal Shield 5 years ago. And I've watched the video, numerous times. And in my head, I've gone, yeah, whatever. Because we had enough going on that I didn't have to have a huge list that I was working regularly, because I kept adding new people because I was meeting people all the time. So now we're not meeting in person. And unfortunately, it looks like it may be a while longer. And we all know that big success comes from a big list. And I figured this is a significant birthday into a new decade. So it's about time to pull a Nike and just do it. So I finally did. I watched the video again, and I pulled what I'm calling phase 1 together. So we're going to watch John's video together, and then we're going to come back. And while we're watching that video, look for tips you haven't used. If you're new, you may want to make a list of all the tips that he lists in this. And then I'm going to share some really cool tips about Prospect and some other software that I'm using and some tricks. And then we're going to talk about phase 2. So you'll want to be sure and stay on, watch the video, and come back so we can have some discussion. All right, video master, roll the video.
Hi, this is John Drennan from Louisville, Kentucky, and today I'm going to talk about how to build your list in Legal Shield. And what I want to start with is, first of all, it's really important to write your list, and just trust that, because so many people say, I got my list in my phone, I got my list in my head, but it's just so important to write the list. So let's start with that. And secondly, it's so important to have a big list. And I want to talk about that for just a minute, because in studying every successful associate, every Millionaire Club member, they all started with a big list. So here are the reasons. Number 1, with the big list, you got urgency. Because if you just have 5 names to call, you can be done with that. There's no urgency. But if you have 500 names, there's tremendous urgency. Secondly is you're going to have a lot more confidence, because if a handful say they're not interested or you can't get through to them, it doesn't matter because you have hundreds more to get to. And thirdly, you're just going to be more efficient. You're going to have to keep your calls brief. You're going to have urgency. So it's so important to have a big list. So what I'm going to do is take you through kind of a quick workshop, if you will, on how to build that big list. So let's start with number 1, what I call harvest your database. And here's what that means. You simply start with your cell phone and pull those names out of your cell phone and write them down. Here's what you want to avoid is trying to figure out, do I want to call them? What will they say? Simply write the name down at this point. Secondly, go to social media. Take your Facebook names, take your Twitter names. Thirdly, you want to go to your checking account. Go back to the last couple years of anyone you've written checks to. Who's cut your hair? Where do you shop? Where do you buy things? Who's your dentist? Who's your insurance agent? Who are the people you're spending money with? Because you're spending money with them. You want them on your list. Next thing you want to do is go to any old lists that you have, like Christmas lists, neighborhood lists, party lists that you might have, as well as any directories. Maybe you have an association directory, a neighborhood directory, a church directory. These are all list assets. You want to bring them into play. And then finally, you want to go to any yearbooks. It could be high school or college or military, any kind of yearbooks. And the last step, and this is a huge one, we all have business cards laying around. They're in drawers, they're on shelves, they're in pockets. Go get the business cards, gather them all, and get them down. I did this one time years ago, and I had such a huge stack of business cards, my wife couldn't believe it, because I pulled them all together one time and got them all on the list. So number 1 is you want to harvest your database. That's really everything I went through. Number 2, and this is the best single exercise I've ever seen, is pull out a Yellow Pages, if you can still find one of those. Pull out Yellow Pages from a big city, or from your city, and just start going through page after page after page. And as you're looking at those pages, what's going to happen is the names, the pictures, the businesses in the Yellow Pages are going to stimulate you. So what we call this is an incredible memory jogger. This Yellow Pages becomes your memory jogger, and as your mind gets jogged, put those names down, and that guarantees you hundreds of names if you will do that exercise. So you've created this list. Now, what a lot of people say in this business is, I'm concerned because I'll run out of names. You will never run out of names. If you do what I just shared with you, you've got hundreds of names. But now let me just briefly talk about what you do on an ongoing basis. What you do is network. There's informal networking, first of all, and we all do it. It's the people you see at your kids' ball games, their school. It's people you see at church, or if you belong to clubs or hobbies. It's just where you go, and you're constantly meeting people, not for the business, but just because you're meeting them. Secondly, you have formal networking. This is where you formally and strategically go to places to meet people. You might join chambers or join meetup groups or join B&I groups where you can go and actively, you're there to meet people, they're there to meet people. That's more of a formal business networking. So here's what we know. You'll never run out of lists if you do these processes. Then as you start to develop your business, you can teach these processes so you never, ever, ever run out of names. So let me wrap up with a riddle. Here's a riddle. How is a list like having a huge amount of gold in your backyard? And the answer is, if you don't mine it, you'll never benefit from it. So get your list and mine it.
All right, there you go. So get your list and mine it. It always helps if you're unmuted when you start talking, people can hear you a little bit better. So what I wanted to do was go over if there were folks that listened to this. I know there are those of us on this Zoom that have seen that video several times. Was there anything that you heard that you hadn't heard before? You can put it in the chat. If there were any tips that you'd heard. And one of the things that I'd like you guys to think about and perhaps help us with is it's hard to find a Yellow Pages now. So if you've got a tip for what a memory jogger could be, that could replace the Yellow Pages, then put that in the chat too, so we can share that, because I've got one that I want to share with you. So phase one for me was digital. And here's what I did. I wanted to show you a little tip. I think, Steve, I can share my screen. Okay, and that is not what I wanted. Okay, let's try that again. Thought I had everything
for a second.
Yeah, I thought I had everything that I, give me just a second here. Let me close what I don't want. All right, I had it set up and then I opened something else and got distracted. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what I wanted to let you guys know is that if you've been using prospects since we started 4 or 5 years ago, you've probably got some prospects in there you haven't touched, because the campaigns, if you put them in campaigns, run for a certain amount of time, if they haven't responded, then they're inactive. Okay, and if you put them in there and you didn't assign them a campaign, they're just sitting there. So you need to harvest your prospect. So all you have to do is just Google, how do I export my contact list from Prospect by Legal Shield? And these directions will pop up for you. And when you pull your contacts up, then down at the bottom, this is an old version. There's only export as a CSV file, which is a comma delimited, like a text file. There's also now you can export into Excel, and there's another option. So you can just Google that to find the directions to pull that list into an Excel spreadsheet and sort it and see, who did you have a membership campaign with? Who did you have in the opportunity campaign? Who did you not have in a campaign? Who are your clients now? If you haven't moved them into membership retention, that's a tickler to go do that. And then everybody who's left is on your list, and you need to work them and reach back out to them. And one of the things I've been using is, especially for my associate prospects, is, hey, it's been a really long time. You know, at some point we talked about Legal Shield as a source of income for you. The world is a vastly different place since we last talked. Let's reconnect. And I've started to get some traction with that. So that was the first thing. I went into PBLS and I exported my contact list. Then I use Evernote to scan my business cards, because, and I'm going to unshare so you guys can see how big my bucket is. John talked about how many he had in a stack. This is my bucket of business cards, and this is how many business cards I have in there. Edsel has scanned quite a number of them for me already. I pay for premium on Evernote. It's around $70 for a year, and you can use your phone, and it can be on multiple devices as well. You take a picture of the business card, it automatically loads it into Evernote, and it reaches out to them on LinkedIn and automatically asks to connect with them on LinkedIn for you. So now with Evernote, with the premium version, you can download all of your prospects, all of your contacts out of Evernote, again, into an Excel spreadsheet. I went through that. I eliminated my duplicates, and I pulled all of them together. And then, you know, I've been doing LOJ events, not as many as Lynn, but I do 4 coffee talks, 1 a week, and then I do a monthly luncheon. So I have about 200 women on my Ladies of Justice list, and they've heard Legal Shield. They know what it is, but you know, the majority of them don't have the membership yet. So I added those people to my list, and folks, that was 1,027 names. You know, John keeps saying you'll never run out of names if you do this. If you use these ticklers, if you go into it, I couldn't believe 1,027 names. And that's not even harvesting my phone yet. Okay. That's just folks out of those 2 places. So I've got it on Edsel's phone. And those of you that don't know, he's my other half, and he's retired and he helps when he can. And this is something that he can do. He's learned how to scan, take the picture with his phone and check it in Evernote and upload it for me. So he's going to be doing this big bucket for me. So while he's doing that, I'm going to do a total phone dump, and I'm going to get all those folks dumped so that I can go through those and, you know, eliminate my duplicates. And then I'm going through social media, and I'm adding all of those names into a spreadsheet. Now, all of that I'm calling phase 1 because all of that's digital. Now, phase 2 is what I'm calling the memory jogger part. And that's where you brainstorm names and you write them down with old-fashioned pen and paper. And there's two things to know about this. And that is that when you're brainstorming, any of you that have ever done any training anywhere or any true brainstorming, you know, there is no evaluation at all. Like true brainstorming, you just pull the name out and you write it down, pull it out, write it down, pull it out, write it down. And you don't evaluate, oh, well, you know, they don't have, whatever it is, no evaluation. The other part is it's super important to write it down with pen and paper. And here's why. So here are three proven ways that handwriting is good for your brain from an article by Nancy Olson in Forbes Life. Number one, handwriting increases the neural activity in certain sections of the brain, similar to meditation. The mere action of writing by hand unleashes creativity not easily accessed in any other way, just by writing. Number two, handwriting sharpens the brain and helps us learn. Studies show writing may even influence how we think, as in more positively. Sequential hand movements like those used in handwriting activate large regions of the brain responsible for thinking, language, healing, and working memory. And number three, handwriting forces us to slow down and smell the ink. Her words, not mine. Mindful writing rests with the brain. Let's try that again. Mindful writing rests the brain, potentially sparking creativity, according to neuroscientist Dr. Claudia Aguirre. And that's why we need to write it down. So this part for me, I'm calling phase 2, and I'm going to follow my dollar. So I am going through my account, Edsel's account, our house account, and anybody we do business with is going on the list. I actually talked to a Legal Shield associate that is not part of Success Partners, but sometimes frequents our events. And he said he went through and he actually fired his hairdresser because he talked to her about Legal Shield, and she said no, and she needed it. And so he found somebody else that was more receptive. I don't know how far I'll go with that, but I'm old enough to have directories and lists like John recommended. And so here's the thing, you can harvest those names, and folks, we can find anything on the internet now. So we can get out there and we can find those people again and reconnect with them, you know, on Facebook or Google them or whatever, do a search for them. And here's a tickler for you. You know, I said that if you can't find a yellow pages like John suggested, here is the standard occupational classifications. And I'll put this link in the chat so that everybody can copy it if they want. But here's the cool thing about this. This is from the US government, and this is a list of all occupations. So this is a great tickler. Who do you know in management? Well, I don't know what's a management occupation. Dude, it lists them all out. So it's got everything in there. So anything that you can think of, even military specific occupations. So this is a great tickler to go to when you can't find a yellow pages. Okay, I'm gonna come back, and then since you're brainstorming, okay, you're not judging at all, you're just writing them on the list. Once you get the list done, then you're going to start to work it. Okay, and to evaluate it, the best thing that I found is the Shield Nation evaluation sheet. And let me go over there. Go back over there and share that for that. Is this Shield Nation? Here it is, the top star prospects. And so if you're new and you haven't seen this, you can go to shieldnation.com and onboarding. And this piece is located there. Here's why this is so great, especially if you're new, or guys, if you haven't done this for a while, you can probably do it from memory. Or just from knowing who your prospects have been in the past that have been great. But this is just a great way to do an evaluation. You know, are they married? Do they have teenage drivers? Do they own their home? Do they own their business? Do they like you? Look at them for a membership, and then for recruiting. You guys know all of this. Dissatisfied if they're entrepreneurial. Do they have credibility? Are they money motivated? Do they have networking skills? Have they seen a tool or video? So the more yeses you have in these squares, then that's who needs to go to the top. But initially, you're just getting the list together. When you're ready to work it, then you can use this tool. And then if you're one of the people that needs to have a script, maybe you're rusty, maybe you haven't been doing this, or maybe, like me, you're like, I'm not sure which direction to go. There are scripts on here that are so simple and easy to use. This is our begintheascent.com website, and you just click on the Get Started, and then go right down here to Fired Up for Fast Start. Click on that. And it tells you exactly what to do. If you've been around a while and you just need to get to the scripts, you just go right down here to the bottom, and here's the scripts right here. And you guys that have been around a while will recognize these. I'm sure that they pulled them from the most successful teams in Legal Shield, Shield Nation included. You'll recognize some of these, but it's a great way to get your brain going. And if you have a tendency, if you're putting off calling, I mean, Carruthers even says in this book that he has to schedule his day. So he starts his calls at 9:30 in the morning, no later, or by noon, he still hadn't made any calls. So if you're feeling a little sketchy about making the calls you need to make, then go ahead and review the scripts and maybe use something from that to get you fired up and ready to rock and roll. Okay, I'm going to come back to the room, and what I'd like to do is, I know Susan Comer and a couple other folks have done the list activity before. If you'd like to share your experience or tips that you guys have, or if you've been working your list and you found something's really worked, thank you, Stacy Lynn. I will do that right now and put that in the chat right here. Let's see, I think I did. There we go. All right, I did remember to copy it. So there's that link for that those occupational codes. So any of you that have built a big list, if there's something else you want to share, if you've worked your list, I'd really like for you to come on and say hello. Hey, Jane.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in, and Susan, I know you're there too. So Susan may have done this. I can't remember. John did this exercise with us once, and it took about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour even, because he was giving us time to write. But we did this call, and at the end of the call, I thought, well, I thought maybe I know 50 people. I had almost 300 that night, and by the time we got done over several days, I had over 700 names. I don't know where that list went.
Oh, Jane, you got to find that list.
I know that was years ago, but I've got a new list. Don't worry.
Okay,
I've got a list. But the point is it was a powerful exercise. I would love to do that. If somebody wants to do that sometime, we could maybe get John to do it again and really take the time to do it, because it's powerful.
To go through it. Yeah. That's great. Thanks so much. Who else has made a list or has tips that they'd like to share or has been working their list? Nobody? Or is everybody asleep?
Leigh, did you want us to speak up?
Yeah. Who's that?
It's Brenda, Louisville, Kentucky. And like Jane, I was in this group, and this was in the early days when John moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And this is like a week-long project at least. And I just remember at the time, I don't know how I had the time, but I mean, all day long, that's all we did was gather our business cards, write down names. And someone like me that had over 20 years of golf students, I mean, I easily came up with about 2,000 names easily. And it's just, you have to stay focused and do it. Like we know, like you said, you will never, ever run out of names. So it is very powerful, but it's more important to have them all in one place instead of scattered everywhere. So it was a very powerful thing. And then again, what's your background? For me, I had my golf. Luckily, I had access to every LPGA teaching professional in the country, and absolutely, I didn't know, even 0.5% of them. And you just start reaching out and make contact with them.
Right. And there's a lot of people that at one point might have been on our chicken list, but now, my thing that I'm saying is, hey, the world's a different place. Let's talk. And it may or may not be for you, but who do you know? Everybody knows somebody that's looking. Steve Beck, I think, were you getting ready to share?
Yeah, Brenda beat me to the punch, but
okay.
that's okay. I recently discovered something. I do concentrate on the B2B side, but I don't eliminate anything. So I use A to Z databases to get information for businesses to call. Your library may have that, or it may have Reference USA, which is very similar. But the last time I was at the library recently, I discovered that A to Z databases, now you can sort, you can get people who have moved into a location. So if you want to use your zip code or your county, or within a certain mile radius, you can get everybody who has moved into that area within whatever time period you specify. So that's we all know that life changes are a trigger for people to get a Legal Shield plan. And that's one of the biggest life changes you can have. So it's another great source to add to your list.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Steve. What a great suggestion. And folks, a tool that you might want to use for that, if you are not familiar with that Stages of Life booklet, I've shared that especially with a couple of younger folks that I know that are getting married or are expecting their first child, to help them think about how could Legal Shield be of assistance to them. Okay, anybody else have suggestions or been through this process or want to share things that they're using to contact their list right now? Hey, Danny and Tim Godin, how are you guys? Danny,
Good.
Tim had to put his hat on.
Yeah, I need to cut my hair, so I hide it under my hat. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of not just having the list. So me and Danny, we got an extensive list, and we were working it or are working it. But I wanted to give a shout out to all of our team, and one in particular, Alan. He is working his list so hard. We don't have time for us to work our list. And you could have 10 people on a list, 100 people on a list. If you don't work them, they're just names on a list. And if you've called or done it and got no's or nothing, it is a numbers game. I think in one day he invited 75 people. 20 said yes, 10 showed up, and we got 2 or 3 going. And we just repeat the cycle over and over. So
go for no.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. And I saw Alan was on. There he is. I see him there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Alan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, he said it. I mean, that's, I just went over the list. As John was talking about on the video, I actually went old school and started writing it down, putting the names down and sending messages out. I was like copy and paste, because it was mostly like through social media contacts. And hey, kind of a quick thing to try to invite them over. Like I say, I had about 70, then I got about 10 response, 20, 15 response, I can't remember. It says something like, oh, I can do it right now, but some other time. And then those 10 says 11 said, yeah, I'll be there. And then about 5 showed up, and I think we got about 3 of them that, most likely will be signing up this week. So yeah, it's the list. I still got to go over and kind of follow up with those other people, and it's but yeah, the list.
Well, and having it written down, you're going to be able to keep track of them that way too, and you won't lose them. So the ones that you have to follow up with, that's huge too. So Alan, was that an invitation to an in-person event, or was that a Zoom event, or both?
A Zoom event.
Zoom event? Okay, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. And folks, if you don't know, Alan just recently made manager. So congrats to him and his team as they move forward, and to Danny and Tim coaching him as well. And Steve Beck, that's all I have this evening. So I appreciate you guys staying with us to the end. And if you have tips, please post them in the Team Ascent Facebook page. And appreciate you guys being here tonight. Steve, back to you for our closing video.
Thanks, Leigh. Actually, I hate to disappoint everyone, but I had assumed that we were going to close with John Drennan's video. So I do not have another video ready to run.
Okay, well, we appreciate you having such a great music selection on the front end, all about lists, because I saw several folks had figured out that's what we're talking about tonight. So here's the deal. Go write down 10 names tonight that you can contact tomorrow. Thanks for being on. We'll have a stretch call in the morning. Steve, thanks as always for you doing such a great job for us. Bye for now, guys.